dive. Today, we're jumping straight into the 17th century. We want to understand that incredible economic engine of the Dutch Republic's golden age.
Right. And central to that, absolutely central, was the koopman, the merchant.
Exactly. This sort of visionary figure managing global logistics, financing. These are the people who really defined the era. We're here to figure out how they basically built the world's first, well, truly global economy.
That's the mission. We need to look closely at Handelscapitalism, commercial capitalism. That's the economic thinking that drove everything.
So where did the money actually come from? How was it all structured? Especially, after 1585 when Antwerp fell and Amsterdam kind of took over as the main hub.
Precisely. That shift is crucial.
Okay, so let's break down Handelscapitalism. It wasn't like the usual approach back then, just hoarding gold, right? Mercantilism.
No, not at all. This was different. The idea was that any money you made, any capital, had to go straight back in. It had to roll, as they said.
Into more trade or industry, maybe agriculture?
Yes, exactly. Reinvestment. Continuous expansion, not just sitting on wealth. That focus on growth rather than just having wealth, that's what made the Dutch model so revolutionary, really.
It's fascinating. But that kind of constant reinvestment, it needs a stable base, right? Where did that initial stability, that core capital, come from?
Well, that brings us to the most important trade of all, really, the Baltic trade, the Oostzee handle.
Okay.
You see, the land in Holland and Zeeland, it wasn't very good for growing large amounts of grain. It was boggy, difficult.
Right, so they couldn't feed themselves easily with local grain.
Pretty much. So they cleverly used their shipping prowess to import essential goods really cheaply from the Baltic region. Think grain, lots of grain, and timber, wood. Basic commodities.
And by getting those essentials cheaply from elsewhere, that freed up their own land, didn't it, for things that made more money?
Exactly. High-value cash crops. Things like violed, which was used for making expensive dyes. So secure the cheap necessities from the Baltic, then focus your own land and labor on luxury or specialized goods.
That makes sense. It's efficient.
Extremely. And that's why the Baltic trade was so profitable and foundational. It got that nickname, the motor negoti.
The mother trade.
Yeah.
Because it basically birthed the capital for everything else.
That's a great way to put it. It didn't just bring in profit, it generated the capital base, the reserves needed for the next much bigger step, global expansion.
Okay, so the mother trade provides the cash. Now, they want to expand globally, but there's competition out there.
Right, and the Dutch approach to competition was pretty straightforward. Eliminate it, or at least control it. This led directly to them setting up two massive state-backed corporations, really pioneering organizations.
Let's start with the big one, the VOC, the Dutch East India Company, founded 1602.
Yep, the VOC. It was given a monopoly by the government, exclusive rights to trade in Asia.
Spices, primarily. That's what we always hear about. Nutmeg, pepper, clove.
Spices were huge, absolutely, hugely valuable. But the really deep dive here, the truly revolutionary part, is how the VOC was financed. Well, it wasn't just the biggest trading company in the world at the time, or the first real multinational. It was the first company ever to fund its massive expeditions, ships, crew, supplies, everything, by selling shares to the public.
Shares, like stock.
Exactly like stock.
Yeah.
Transferable shares. Anyone with spare cash could buy a piece of the VOC. This spread the risk, Instead of a few rich merchants funding a whole voyage, they tapped into general public capital.
Wow. So the foundation of the modern stock market, basically.
Pretty much. Right there in Amsterdam, 1602. Profits were then paid out typically after a year or when a fleet returned. But we have to be clear here. Getting and keeping that monopoly wasn't peaceful.
No, I imagine not.
They had to push out rivals, especially the Portuguese who were there first. And they used significant force, coercion, even violence against the local populations in the Spice Islands to enforce their trade terms. It wasn't just about business deals.
Okay, so the VOC sets the model for global reach and this new kind of financing. Then comes the WIC, the West India Company, 1621.
That's right. The WIC had a slightly different kind of dual mandate.
How so?
Well, yes, it was about trade and setting up colonies in the West Indies, the Americas. But it also had a military function, specifically privateering.
Privateering, so state-sponsored piracy.
Essentially, yes. Because the Dutch Republic was still at war with Spain, the WIC was authorized to attack and capture Spanish ships, especially the treasure fleets coming from the Americas. It was economic warfare as much as trade.
Undercutting the enemy while also potentially making a profit.
Exactly. And if we look at the WIC's operations in the Atlantic, it became deeply involved in the triangle trade.
The slave trade.
Yes, the forced transport of enslaved Africans to the Americas. This labor was crucial for the colonies and plantations they established, places like Curacao, and in Suriname, growing sugarcane and coffee. Very profitable, but built on immense human suffering.
So putting it all together for someone listening.
Yeah.
You have the Baltic trade providing the foundational cash.
The Montenegro debt?
Then the VOC creates this template for global monopoly using public shares, focused on Asia.
Right, the first multinational first stock issuer.
And the WIC handles the Atlantic, mixing trade, colonization, warfare, and, tragically, the slave trade.
Correct. These three pillars working together, sometimes overlapping, they really constructed this first properly interconnected world economy in the 17th century. It was a Dutch-dominated system for a while.
An incredible run of dominance. But it didn't last forever, did it?
No, nothing does. By the later 17th century, things started to shift. Other powers, particularly England and France, were catching up. They were centralizing their states, building their own navies and trading companies, and competing much more effectively. The Dutch advantage began to erode.
Right. So thinking about that legacy then, especially the VOC model, selling shares to fund these incredibly risky long-distance ventures, how much of our modern global economy for venture capital, risk management, multinational corporations, how much of that really has its DNA traceable back to what these 17th century Dutch merchants needed to make handels capitalism work on a global scale?
That's a really powerful question. The structures they created out of necessity then, you can certainly see echoes of them everywhere in finance and global business today.
Something definitely worth thinking about as you continue your learning journey.